We're back with more action on Sports Extra as the afternoon goes on, but right now you're on Sports Extra. It is time for practice 2. We're off to Imola again, and we say a very good afternoon to Ben Edwards. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Yes, we're getting ready for the second practice session here at Imola and looking forward to it after an impressive performance once again by McLaren earlier on today when Oscar Piastri, the championship leader who's been in such great form recently, he was fastest from his teammate Lando Norris by a tiny amount, 0.032 of a second. Well, it's great to have you with us and joining us alongside Mark Priestley, former mechanic at McLaren in Formula One, and also our F1 correspondent for BBC Sport, Andrew Benson, here with us as well. Mark, we're looking forward to the second practice session coming up. That was quite impressive, of course, from McLaren, but it is very, very close. As I mentioned, the top five, Lewis Hamilton, the fifth fastest, all separated by 0.1 of a second. And actually, I was looking back, it is the closest FP1. In Saudi, 16 cars were separated by 1 second. We had 18 cars separated by 1 second in FP1, so that's the closest so far this year.
Yeah, amazing stuff, and it really is a sign of just how close the sport is right now, isn't it? We're at the end of a fairly stable set of regulations, coming towards the end of that period where everything changes again next year, and as a result of that, people have figured out how to get the best out of these cars. They're all fine-tuning them now, not looking for the giant leaps we were a few years ago, and so the competition on track is close. So if the weekend continues in that vein, then we're in for a real treat. FP1 was all about learning, about understanding this track and the cars with some upgrades up and down the paddock on with various teams. New tyres in the C6, the softest tyre that Pirelli's brought. So a lot of learning happened. There's been some time over the break to sort of compute that, to analyse it, to understand it, and then we go again with FP2, try and put it into practice. Yeah, it's going to be fun to see how it all develops, and the weather is good at the moment. We've got some sunshine, blue sky, temperature just under 20 degrees, and no prospect of any rain today. There is a possibility of some rain on Sunday, but it's looking all pretty good. Track temperature at 38 degrees, so they are getting a feel for the tyres. It's not a particularly abrasive surface here, so they've been able to go for this softest set of Pirelli compounds. And despite the fact you've got quite a variation of corners, it's fast and flowing, quite technical in places. As you were saying earlier, some of the curbs you've got to be wary of, but it's not a track that really overheats the tyres massively, is it? No, it's not. It's relatively speaking, it's relatively easy on the tyres in that sense. That's, like you say, that's why they've been able to bring the softer end of the range, this new C6 tyre, and it's also in an attempt to try and just tempt the teams into the possibility of having a two-stop race. The one-stop race around this particular circuit, which has been the tradition in recent times, is often not the most exciting. It's a difficult place to overtake. No one really wants to make more than one pit stop because the pit lane itself is incredibly long, and running along there at the pit lane speed limit means you lose up to 28 or 29 seconds for a pit stop in the race, which is a considerable amount more than at most other tracks. So all of those features mean that most teams will do whatever they can to make it a one-step race. Pirelli, bringing the really soft tyre with the C6, is just trying to give them an option, trying to tempt them into the possibility of perhaps making two to spice up the action. Absolutely right. We did see one incident in free practice 1. That was Gabriele Bortoleto, who had an off right at the end of free practice, damaged the front end of the car. Hopefully they'll be able to get that car back out. It didn't look as though it was really badly damaged. Unfortunate, but have to say that both the Saubers were going pretty well in free practice 1 with Bortoleto. He was 9th fastest and Nico Hulkenberg 10th fastest, which is a little unusual. Of course, we are only looking at free practice. We're not looking at actual qualifying, and you will get a different status of cars being further up than expected sometimes. But the Williams of Carlos Sainz, that was rapid. 3rd fastest, just 0.052 of a second slower than Oscar Piastri. And Alex Albon was also competitive. So both Williams cars were in the top 10. Pierre Gasly in his Alpine, he was 6th fastest. He has a new teammate this weekend. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. Franco Contepello, who is also here, but Gabriele Bortoleto, sorry, I just wanted to mention him because we were just seeing him a moment ago. Colapinto is who I was talking about. Bortoleto is going out, so it doesn't look as though they've got a problem with that car. No, it was a fairly innocuous collision with the barriers, nose in, and I think it literally just looked like it damaged the front wing. They obviously have a plethora of spares of those, and so I suspect it'll be a fairly simple swap over, and he's ready to go again for FP2. just come back to what you said about Williams. It was an encouraging start to them, and it's actually been an encouraging start to the season, I think, for Williams. They're a team that have been rebuilding in the background quite a lot, as you're hearing the cars just rolling out of the garage and along the pit lane now. Williams are in good shape, I think, and really they're building towards the major regulation change that comes in 2026, getting their house in order, changing the management structure, getting the drivers in order as well. Carlos Sainz joining the team alongside Albon's, a really strong driver lineup. Everything in the background is just coming on song at the right time, ready to hit the ground running, hopefully, with a 2026 car to take advantage of the new regulations.
Well, for the Ferrari about to head down the pits as well, Charles Leclerc just heading down the pits now. This is a longer pit lane than we have at many of the circuits. It does mean for a longer pit stop than many of the tracks, so that's why, as we were talking about earlier, it does make it a little more likely to be a one-stop race. It's 548-metre pit lane, so the pit loss is around 25 seconds, so it can make it difficult to make it work as a two-stop race. But for Ferrari, of course, and both for Charles Leclerc and particularly in a way for Lewis Hamilton, racing in Italy, and this is the track that's closer to the Ferrari manufacturer than Monza, of course. Monza is the big one for the Italian Grand Prix, but nonetheless this is a very significant track for them.
Yeah, exactly, and there's mounting pressure at Ferrari, isn't there, to get their season kick-started. Many would argue it's even too late really to make a sizable dent in this championship. Because the pressure's ramping up, because they've had a couple of years under Fred Vasseur now, they have been sort of moving things gradually in the right direction. They've been close, but not close enough. But it's now McLaren that have taken the giant leap forward. Red Bull are still in that mix. Mercedes are coming back on song and always there or thereabouts. It's now Ferrari who, on many occasions, certainly last time out in Miami, find themselves as the fourth of those top four teams, I guess. And with Lewis Hamilton coming in, there was such high expectation, high hopes. It's very, very early days, certainly in the Lewis-Hamilton relationship. So, as he said himself yesterday, let's not make judgments yet. This is the beginning of a long-term project. But at their home race, where there's huge expectation from fans, they will really hope to be able to deliver something this weekend.
Max Verstappen just heading out onto the circuit, and of course he's had a very good time here. 3 victories over the last 3 entries here, and we shall see how he gets on. There's a youngster watching from the up in the stands, thoroughly enjoying seeing some of the stars coming out on circuit. But Max Verstappen was 7th fastest earlier, so showing some pretty good pace, especially as the times are all so close. But is he going to be able to maintain that amazing winning victory that he's got here at Imola? It has been a track that suited him. He was under pressure from Lando Norris right at the end of last year, but he managed to get over the line onto the last lap by just keeping him out of the DRS zone, and went on to win yet again here.
Yeah, and it could easily be a similar story. Overtaking is not that easy around this racetrack. It's very old school. There's some stop-start sections with chicanes in the middle of the circuit as well. There are not too many opportunities to make a big lunge on the brakes and get by. So if you can have a good qualifying session, we know how good Max is on a Saturday afternoon. If he can get the car in front on the grid and get a great start at the beginning of the Grand Prix, he might even be able to then control the pace of that race, holding the car back as Hamilton has a massive step out at the rear at the chicane, but continues. If he can get to the front in qualifying and then get away from the line well, Max Verstappen has a very good chance, as by the way does the likes of George Russell and anyone else who can really perform in qualifying. They might be able to hold those McLarens back.
Absolutely right. Lewis Hamilton pushing pretty hard at this stage, and that's why I reacted slightly, because you said he had a sideways moment, which is a bit rare. He won the 2020 race. When Formula 1 came back to Imola, it had been off the Formula 1 calendar since 2006, when Michael Schumacher took the last victory. Hamilton took the victory in 2020 when he was driving for Mercedes. Now, of course, he's having his first time driving for Ferrari here. He did have the pole position in 2021, but it didn't quite work out for him in the race itself. But we shall see how it goes. He was going quite effectively earlier on in that first free practice session. As I mentioned, he was 5th fastest, very, very close to the time that Oscar Piastri had set up front. And we'll see how this goes. Let's just see how this first lap comes together. Is he going to set the initial pace across the line? No, not initially. He's on the soft tyres. He goes 5th fastest. Well, interestingly, Isaac Hadjar has gone fastest at the moment.
He looked like he was actually on the medium tyre. The graphic does say the soft tyre, but I'm pretty sure, as we look at it, he's on the yellow Wolves medium tyre. But either way, I think, he's on the medium. So a slight offset to many of the cars around him. But actually, from this morning's session, it was Hamilton that was the most comfortable of the two Ferrari drivers. Neither of them particularly happy yet in this early in the weekend, but it was certainly him over and above Charles Leclerc that seemed to have a handle on that car.
Absolutely right. And of course, we've seen Hamilton deliver well on the sprint events so far this year, but it hasn't quite worked for him in the Grand Prix. Let's bring Andrew Benson in, correspondent for BBC Sport. The Ferrari support here at Imola this weekend is going to be massive, Andrew. I mean, this is the first European event of the season. It's always a massive Italian level of fans here. How do you think Ferrari are going to do? Because they really struggled in Miami, but actually in Saudi before that, they delivered a pretty decent result.
Yeah, Leclerc was third in Saudi. That's their only podium actually this year, apart from Hamilton's win in the sprint, which obviously isn't a podium position because they don't stand on the podium. I mean, look, there's no hiding from the fact that Ferrari have had a disappointing start to the season. They ended last year, running McLaren very close for the Constructors' Championship. I think it was 13 points in it. And Fred Vasseur was saying through the winter, whenever he did a media appearance, that he expected this season to carry on very much like the second half of last season ended, which was basically that for any given race, you didn't know which one of the top four teams was going to be the one that was most likely to win. Some races it was, there was a pattern that McLaren and Ferrari and Red Bull and Mercedes were quite close, with McLaren generally the most successful team. But some races Ferrari did really well, some races Mercedes did really well. For example, they dominated in Las Vegas, and some Red Bull won, like in Qatar. Verstappen won, which was his first win for quite a while. But that's not the way this season's started. It started with McLaren in a very strong position and everybody else struggling to one degree or another, and only Red Bull of the top four teams apart from McLaren have won a race, and that was after that extraordinary qualifying lap from Max Verstappen in Suzuka. And basically there was no overtaking in Japan after that. So McLaren have made a step forward over the winter, which Ferrari have not been able to match, and there's no question as a result of that the pressure is mounting. On top of that, of course, Hamilton's joined, the most successful Formula 1 driver in history, and his personal performance hasn't been as strong as he would have wanted. He's generally been behind Charles Leclerc. There have been a couple of exceptions to that, but generally that's the pattern again. So Vasseur, Ben, we were watching the press conference, weren't we, in between the two practice sessions, and Fred Vasseur was in that, and he was saying again in that very similar words to what he's been saying all year, like, we're not in that dissimilar position from Mercedes and Red Bull. McLaren are ahead. We have strong periods, strong races, strong sessions, and we have weaker races and sessions, and he always highlights the times when they're strong, like for example the race in Saudi, for example, or a particular stint in a particular race. He also said that in Miami was not a good weekend for them. They've got upgrades coming, but it's a big gap to close. And it seems there's a fundamental issue with the Ferrari car, that they basically can't run it at the ride height they want to run it at. Fernando Alonso's just been blocked quite badly by someone.
Colapinto, I think.
Was it? He was just completely in the middle of the road, not paying attention. Here's the radio.
Yeah, I nearly crashed.
You did, Fernando, yes.
That was a bit silly of Colapinto. He was right in the middle of the road there. He didn't go one way or the other, and Alonso did very well to actually just have to slow right down to avoid him.
Yeah, I think he could see. He didn't really nearly crash because he saw it coming in front of him, didn't he?
He did,
but it was a fair point and a fair criticism to make. Yeah, so this is the third year of Fred Vasseur's stewardship of Ferrari, and whereas it looked at the end of last year like they were heading in the right direction, the progress that McLaren have made, particularly on race pace, has kind of caught everybody, including them, a little bit on the hop this year, and it's definitely increasing the pressure there.
Well, we'll see how Ferrari get on one of their home tracks effectively here this weekend, whether they're going to be strong or not. Right now, in the early stages, we've just seen Carlos Sainz go quickest. I was just about to say, well, it's McLaren again, because Norris a fraction ahead of Piastri, who'd just improved, but no, Carlos has just gone fastest, the ex-Ferrari driver, who is now with Williams, obviously going pretty well. Gasly still well up in the order, he's 4th, Russell is currently 5th, Verstappen 6th, Hamilton 7th, very early in FP2, and of course we'll see a bit of a run in about a third of the way through this second practice, where we'll see the quickest times, and then they'll go more into race mode.
Yeah, exactly right. We're about to see, I think, the other Williams join his teammate up in the front row. Indeed he does. So second for Albon, first for Sainz as things stand, both on the medium tyre, nothing between them, a few hundredths of a second, that's all it is, once again separating the top 3, just highlighting how close things are this season. That's
impressive. They're actually 3-3 at the moment in qualifying so far this year, so we'll see tomorrow which one ends up qualifying ahead of the other. Albon's done a very good job, but Sainz is getting to grips with the car more, I think. It was a little bit tricky for him initially, always is when you move, a bit like Lewis Hamilton. We're listening and watching Lewis Hamilton right now as he went through the chicane. That was okay, there was a car up ahead of him, but that other car kept out of the way, but he was over the curb and just touched the gravel too. Just went in a little deep, I think, the Ferrari of Hamilton. He will have been disturbed by the car ahead of him, but yeah, dripping a weird into the gravel, but getting away with it.
He looks like he's fighting that car, doesn't he, in this session so far, Hamilton? That's the moment at the first chicane at Tamburello, and now that second moment you're just referring to is at the Variante Alta. Car not moving smoothly in the way that you want a Formula 1 car to look like it's moving when you're watching it, so I don't think he's a particularly happy man, and he's about 4/10 slower than teammate Charles Leclerc at the moment, so a bit of work to do on that second Ferrari. Absolutely. We're keeping an eye on Isaac Hadjar, who's just done a very good first sector, matching Lando Norris, who has reset the fastest times. Norris has gone quicker than Sainz again, and we've got a bit of onboard footage that we're keeping an eye on right now with Isaac Hadjar as he comes through the lovely double right-hander, Aqua Minarolo, and then Variante Alta. Coming up is the right-left, another chicane where we've seen plenty of people running a bit wide. Actually, he got that just about right. And then you're up at the top of the hill, starting to plunge back down again into the final section of the lap. 2 left-handers where it's very easy again to run wide, either in the middle or on the exit, which where we saw the accident for Portoletto earlier. Hadjar's actually dealt with that well. His middle sector not quite so rapid. He goes 10th fastest. What did you reckon on that, Mark? Well, it looked like a fairly tidy lap in terms of he wasn't out of control at many places. It seemed like it was tidy, but you know, sometimes when things look that tidy, they're either just perfect or they're not going quick enough. And middle of the road there, middle of the table, 10th at the moment. He is currently quicker than his teammate Liam Lawson, but a long way to go. But there is definitely potential in that car. And I said it earlier on, I think Hadjar has had a pretty solid start to his Formula 1 career, really, after a really disappointing or traumatic opener down in Australia where he crashed on the way to the grid. He's bounced back from that and seemingly just getting better and better and better, which is great. That's all you can do. If you keep the rate of progression going, even if it's only small progression, if you keep progressing, then that's then the people around you will be happy. The people at Red Bull are looking for him to progress all the way through, because eventually that leads to something quite significant. Oh, absolutely right. Isaac Hadjar, the 20-year-old Frenchman with background from Algeria as well, and he certainly has done a decent job, as you say. That 8th place in Japan he had, the 10th place in Saudi, so he's scored some points, and he's 3-1 up ahead of Lawson in terms of qualifying since they've rejoined. We're just watching Lewis Hamilton on board here. Yeah, he had my goodness, he had a car right in the way of him as well. That was one of the Saubers. And we're seeing this quite a lot. It is difficult. Oh my goodness, another car in his way as well, and that was Tsunoda, I think, who had actually been complaining about lots of other cars being in his way earlier. I'm just sort of imagining Lewis Hamilton sort of blaming the kids, the old guard, McLaren, Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton,
into their 40s, running around and keep these pesky kids that just keep getting in the way of them. But yes, it's going to be a feature, partly because this is quite a narrow circuit, it's very old school, and also partly because it's quite undulating. There's a lot of height change around the lap, and there are a number of places where you could be rising up a hill or going down a hill, and you come over the crest of that hill to find a car. You're very reliant on your engineer here and your team to give you the information about where everyone else is on circuit and what pace they're doing, because you don't always get the opportunity to see very far in front of you as to what you're coming up against.
A young kid wearing a Ferrari helmet, clapping away as Lewis Hamilton went past him, but Hamilton only 11th fastest at this stage. Lando Norris has set the pace, Sainz in second, Albon third, the two Williams showing great pace so far, Piastri in fourth place, Charles Leclerc up into fifth with Gasly in sixth place, seventh place for Max Verstappen, and then George Russell's been pushed down to eighth, but of course quite a few of them are in the pits. Some of them did early laps, some of them are now back out. We're keeping an eye on Franco Colapinto now, who we were talking about a bit earlier. He's the 21-year-old Argentinian who is back into F1 this weekend, taking over the seat that Jack Doohan had for the first part of this season, and we know he's going to be in the car for at least 5 events. We shall see how it goes, because he was very confident, chatting away in the press conference yesterday, because he loves being here at Imola. He's had great results in both Formula 3 and in Formula 2. He likes this track. He wasn't as quick as his teammate earlier on today, but he's just improved a bit. He's 10th quickest at the moment, and I think he's sensibly, Mark, I think he's sensibly taking a quite a good approach here. He's back into this car, but he's done a lot of simulator work, but it's the first time he's really driven it, so he knows he's got to build this weekend up. It's no point in going mad straight away.
Yeah, exactly right. He's got to build momentum as the weekend goes on. What Franco needs to do this weekend, and the thing that Jack Doohan wasn't able to do, because Jack Doohan had some good performances at times, particularly in qualifying, but he was never really able to consistently string an entire weekend together. That's the job that Franco Colapinto needs to be able to do. That's what the team need him to do. That's why he's been brought in, given this opportunity. So whether he sort of sets the world alight in terms of lap times in his first weekend, I don't think anyone's expecting that. But if he can build a really good, strong weekend from start to finish, so a good qualifying and then translate that qualifying into a decent race, I think the team around him will be happy, and the opportunities will keep coming for him.
Yeah, no, it could well be the case. So quite a few of the cars are back into the pits right now. We've still got one or two out there still putting some laps together. Nearly all of them have been using the medium compound tyre, but I think we will be getting into a phase soon where the soft tyres will be coming back on to see what they can do on the soft tyre over a flying run, and then of course they will be putting more fuel in the cars and doing their race testing, really, to make sure that they've got the car working in those conditions. Lando Norris just getting back in his car at the moment, but he is quickest so far on a 1:15.952. The qualifying record here actually still goes right the way back to 2020 with Valtteri Bottas, who did a 1:13.609. So whether we're going to get quite down to that level, I'm not sure this weekend. But of course, they will be going quicker and quicker with more rubber going down onto the surface.
Yeah, exactly right. And because we're using these very soft C6 tyres, they're the softest tyres in the Pirelli range, softer than we've ever had before, because up until now we've only had 5 dry tyre compounds. We now have 6. So the C6 will be putting more rubber down than any other on the track because it's so soft. The nature of that means that as we start pushing on those, particularly over the course of the first practice session that we had earlier on, again, I'm sure we'll see it again later on in this session, and then on Saturday more so, we'll get more and more rubber going down onto the racing line, and that just improves the grip. As long as it stays dry, the grip will continue to build as the weekend goes on, and hopefully by the time we do get to qualifying on a Saturday afternoon with these very fast, soft, grippy tyres on, we might see some staggeringly quick lap times around this circuit.
Absolutely right. And it's quite interesting to me that Williams are doing a good job at the moment. You know, they're running second and third fastest. Williams and Ferrari have shared 8 wins over the many years here at Imola, even though it was off the calendar for a while. But if you look at the overall times, McLaren actually had plenty of wins. They've had 6 wins here, but not for a long time, because the last McLaren win here was in 1998, and David Coulthard managed to take that. They did have a pole before that, and in fact they've had 9 poles, I believe, here in the past, and Kimi Räikkönen had a later one in the early 2000s, although he didn't go on to take the victory that time. So McLaren have good results here in the past, but not in recent years. We'll see whether that changes. Norris is fastest at the moment, but George Russell, we're riding on board with George. He's actually putting together a good lap at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's the first run on the soft tyre in this session that we're going to see. So he's gone faster than anybody in the middle sector. Pretty decent first sector as well, although not quickest in that one. But he's coming through the final corner, out of the final turn, onto the straight. He does go quickest, so he takes about, I think that's about 6 or 7 tenths off his previous lap time that was set on the medium. A 15.6, that is 2.5 tenths quicker than Lando Norris on the medium. So a decent lap time. I suspect we'll probably look to see people like Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri taking an even greater step when they put the soft tyre on. But that's a decent start. Good marker from George Russell. The others, I'm sure, will follow very shortly.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. We shall see how this all goes. But George Russell has been very consistent, top 5 all the way through the results so far in this year's championship. But obviously trying to get a real top result. That's what he's trying to do. His best finish has been second so far. He's had the 4 podiums, but whether he can try and take a victory, well, we shall see whether it can happen here at Imola. Speed trap showing that Hamilton, Colapinto and Leclerc all on the same top speed, so the Ferrari clearly fast in a straight line, as is the Alpine actually, because Colapinto and Gasly both up there.
Yeah, well, what that's telling you, Ben, is that both Ferrari and Alpine are running a relatively low downforce setup compared to some of the others. So the Alpine, we know, has the least powerful engine. It's one of the reasons why Renault boss CEO Chief Executive Officer Luca De Meo, I should say, forgive me everybody, has decided to end the Renault F1 engine program at the end of this year. They're going to be using Mercedes customer engines next year. They're a little bit down on power on everybody else, so if they're up there at the top of the speed trap for times, which they are, that's because they're running less downforce on the car. Ferrari obviously made a similar decision. Their engine is pretty much on a par with the other top engines, the Mercedes and Honda, but it's an interesting setup approach, and it may be geared towards the race, of course, because you're obviously thinking in the race about defending and attacking as opposed to ultimate performance. Having said that, this is a track where overtaking is not easy, so you would think it would be one where you would lean towards ultimate performance more than downforce, but they obviously feel that's the way they run, that their car can go fastest at the moment. We didn't see what the gaps were, did we? We only saw the top 5, and there's only like 1 kilometre an hour in it, so we'll have a look later on when we get the stats to see where Red Bull and McLaren sit in relation to that, although Tsunoda's car, I noticed, was in that top 5, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's going to be interesting. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen has just come out of the pits onto the circuit. He is onto the soft tyres, so as you said, Mark, we've seen Russell do that first run on the soft tyres. Now we're going to get a clearer indication of just who is setting the pace at this stage in FP2 before they go into race stage. Franco Colapinto just in the pits at the moment, only driver to have won Imola in both Formula 3 and F2 races here in the past. Now back out in Formula 1, and it's going to be exciting to see, but of course we are also missing Jack Doohan at the same time because he's had a bit of a short run with that team. We'll have to see how that continues in the future. Max now building up the speed, taking it fairly easy actually on the outlap. These soft tyres, you don't need to push them too hard to get the tyre temperature up.
Yeah, the softer end of the range tends to warm up a lot easier just because there's so much more movement in the rubber itself, so you build temperature easier in these tyres. The challenge normally with the softer end of the range is actually not overheating the tyre, particularly in the race longer stints, of course, when your car's full of fuel and you've got to look after them for much longer spells. But Max on his way round now, just building all the temperatures, not just tyres but brakes as well, getting everything into the right zone, just getting a feel for the car in these current conditions, and he'll come out the final corner to start this flying lap, and this will be his first outright qualifying simulation run around this circuit this afternoon. We'll get a reasonable comparison to the Mercedes of George Russell. He's going to be slightly out of sync to some of the other front runners just because he's the only one, I think, bar And there's a few now emerging out of the pit, so we'll get a reasonable comparison actually now, with everybody around about the same time putting the soft tyre on. So far from Max Verstappen, decent, roughly on a par with George Russell, having come through the first sector there.
Yeah, he's climbing up out of turn 7 through turn 8 into Piratella, the left-hander slightly higher up, and then you start to plunge back down again through turns 10 and then into the double right-hander at Minerali. So trying not to run too wide, he does that quite nicely, out over the curb, building up again, so you've got these height differences very much into the chicane at Alta, which is terribly easy to run wide, but he's got that fastest middle sector, so this is certainly on target to beat the time that George Russell has set so far.
Yeah, he's gained a lot of time in the middle sector over and above the Mercedes. Antonelli's on a run as well, and he's nowhere near as quick, so he's about 3.5 tenths down on what his teammate George Russell could do. Verstappen's going to come out and across the line now, and he goes second by just 4/100ths of a second slower than George Russell. It's close.
It is very, very close indeed, but what can the others do, particularly of course the McLarens? We will be watching very, very closely to see what they can do, but at the moment it's Russell, Verstappen and a lot of the others now going out on the soft tyres for us to give us a little bit more indication. Are they going to get clear laps? Interestingly, Russell and Verstappen have kind of gone out at a good time because there wasn't much out there. Tsunoda has just managed to get past a car before going into Alta chicane himself, and he set the fastest first sector so far.
Yeah, and that's interesting because that's his teammate wasn't able to do that, so Verstappen wasn't able to go that quickly in the first sector. At least Tsunoda proving that the car, at least in his hands, is capable of dominating that early part of the lap. So he drops in just behind, around just over a tenth slower than Verstappen, but it gives some hope that there's more time in that car, even on Verstappen's side, given that first sector I don't think he maximised.
Now, funnily enough, a Racing Bulls car has just split the two Red Bull cars as Isaac Hadjar's gone over the line. 0.099 off George Russell. So Russell's time is still holding at the top, but you've now got a Red Bull of Verstappen in second place, the Racing Bulls car of Hadjar in third, and then the other Red Bull in fourth. We're still now waiting to see how the McLarens get on. Norris has just set the fastest middle sector.
Yeah, 2 tenths up by the middle part of the lap in the hands of Lando Norris. This is kind of what we expect. We think the McLarens will dominate over the course of the weekend, as they have done so far this season. We mentioned it earlier on as well. Whatever you see from the Red Bull, particularly in the hands of Verstappen, but also Tsunoda, who's not too far behind, they run their car quite differently on a Friday. Norris crosses the line 3.5 tenths quicker than George Russell to top the timesheets. Fast in the middle and final sector, and his Piastri, his teammate, now going even quicker in the first part of the lap. But yeah, maybe more to come on the side of Red Bull, particularly with Verstappen, because we know they turn their engines up on a Saturday, which might gain them at least a couple of tenths over what they're running now on a Friday, whereas McLaren tend to run their power unit at pretty much the same high mode all the way through the weekend.
Piastri went a little bit risky there. He had a bit of a sideways moment, just stayed off the gravel, but he's done 2 top sectors so far. He's now into the final section. The 2 left-handers, he's got a car ahead of him, but thankfully it's not getting in the way, and actually he'll get a little bit of slipstream. Oh, not for long, because the car's gone in the pits. Let's just see. Yes, it does take him quickest by 0.025 of a second over his teammate Lando Norris. But one of the surprises to me again is that Pierre Gasly's back up there. He's been consistently up there. Let's see what Williams can do now. Carlos Sainz got a lot of traffic in front of him. Oh, he's found a way through the middle of it. That's good, because he's now in the final sector, but his middle sector was not fantastic. So I'm not sure this is going to put Carlos back up in that front group. Listen to Hamilton.
His damn brakes, mate. His brakes are a problem.
Such a shame. Lewis is just not enjoying the brakes on the Ferrari this year. He's talked about it several times. Sainz has gone 9th quickest, so that wasn't quite as good as earlier. But Gasly, I am impressed with what Gasly's done. 3rd fastest so far.
Yeah, that's a good run. Well, you know, given all the caveats we talked about with engine modes that we don't know about at this point, we do know that they'll all be on very low fuel and they're all on the fastest C6 or the soft tyre. So there's definite comparisons to be made, and that is a good lap. If you look at Carlos Sainz in the Williams, he was actually on for a decent lap. A very good first sector, and he may have even overheated the tyres in the first part of the lap and had to he struggled his way right through the second sector and final sector, soaring at the wheel, just not able to get the power down.
Antonelli's had an off as well at the Alta chicane. He had to straight line it, and we're also having a look at Max Verstappen. Listen.
I got quite hard in 11-12 and rear again, what I mentioned. Okay, understand.
So he's just giving information to the team once again, because he was going through the Acqua Minerale that he was talking about, turns 11 and 12, where it drops down and then levels off, and he's saying the bottom of the car is just hitting the road too much.
There's a big compression at the bottom of that hill. It's like driving down the bottom of a valley almost, and although these cars don't move very much, the suspension's incredibly stiff. We might be talking about a few millimetre, but that can be the difference between the car hitting the floor, and when it does that, of course, and the bottom of the car hits the floor, it effectively takes the downforce off the tyres, and if you're on the throttle at that point, you can lose grip, you start spinning up the tyres, that overheats them, and of course, if you're spinning the tyres, you're not moving forward. So bottoming out, as well as wearing the plank and all the complications that can come with that, this is the last thing you want to do, and it sounds like it was a problem they might have had earlier, haven't quite managed to get on top of it yet.
Lance Stroll's on a lap at the moment in the Aston Martin. We're waiting to see what either Astons can do, because they've come out on the softs a little bit later. We haven't seen Alonso come out on his yet. But Lance Stroll we're riding with right now. He's doing some personal bests, but whether this is going to put him really up into the top 10, let's just wait and see where this is going to put him. Piastri still fastest? No, it's not top 10. It puts him in 14th, just over a second away from the fastest time. So we've now got 13 cars separated by 1 second from Oscar Piastri down to Liam Lawson in that 13th place, and just behind them now is Lance Stroll. Waiting to see what Bortoletto does. He's on an out lap right now. Hulkenberg is currently down in 16th place. And Verstappen, is he on another? He's not on a full quick lap at the moment. He's still on the soft tyres. Whether he's going to do another slow lap and back out, we'll see. Hamilton down in 18th. We're waiting to see him on the soft tyres yet.
Yeah, and this is so close, and we've talked about it being so close all weekend, all sessions long. It's going to make a big difference when it comes to qualifying. With the times being this close and how difficult it is to overtake, like we said, the importance of qualifying is going to come down to who makes the fewest mistakes, and they might be the tiniest of mistakes, but it's who can nail the perfect lap. And that's going to be the all-important one on Saturday.
The brakes on mode warm-up are horrendous. Like, it's not braking.
Yeah, we can think about something for tomorrow.
That's interesting. That is interesting that Leclerc's also saying the brakes are not working on warm-up, certainly. He's just had a little wobble through the first chicane. He's running through, you're listening now, through to the second, the Villeneuve chicane, the rapid one, before he brakes hard down into turn 7 at Tosa. Meanwhile, we're also keeping an eye on Lando Norris, who is currently second fastest by that tiny, tiny margin from his teammate, Oscar Piastri. But yes, we want to keep an eye on the Ferraris and see whether they can find a bit more. 6th place at the moment for Leclerc. As you said earlier, a bit of a slide there for Lando, he sorted it out. These tyres are working quite well on a second quick lap, although he has backed off now.
Yeah, Lando's had to back off because coming out of that the Variante Alta chicane, he just got a big step of oversteer and it ruined the lap. So he'll take another lap now to cool things down, potentially have another crack at it. It's important for Lando Norris. I think it's important, as well as the general importance of positioning his car on the racetrack for the race in qualifying, the psychology of being in front of his teammate. I think we're at an important phase of that. Oscar Piastri's won 4 of 6 races, and it won't take too much longer before that starts to get on top of someone like Lando Norris, the guy that we all thought this could be the year for him, and I'm sure he would have thought that as well. He's been building towards it, came close last year, and all of a sudden he's got an almost unexpected and pretty serious challenge from his young teammate Oscar Piastri. The psychology between those two, I think, could play a really important part as the season goes on.
Andrew, there was a comment from the team boss earlier too, wasn't there, about how Piastri is doing such a strong job this year?
Yeah, I mean, there was the press conference lasted half an hour. The most important thing I think that anybody said was Andrea Stella, the McLaren team principal, saying that Piastri's a faster driver this year. And I think this is one of the standout questions or stories, if you like, of 2025 Formula One. It's the change in the balance of power within McLaren. You know, last year there was absolutely no question that Lando Norris was the better of the two drivers. Okay, Piastri won 2 races, but they were both races in which he wasn't actually faster than Norris. He just was ahead of him through circumstance. Now, the circumstance in the first one in Hungary was his own doing. He got a better start and got into the lead and controlled the race from there, and then there was a bit of shenanigans with team strategy, which I won't get bogged down in now. And then in Baku, Norris was out of the equation because he had a penalty. Piastri drove brilliantly there, by the way, with a fantastic overtaking manoeuvre on Charles Leclerc's Ferrari to take the lead, and controlled the race from there in a really impressive way. But in terms of qualifying, I think he only out-qualified Norris 4 times in the entire season, whereas this year the balance of power in both racing and qualifying is with Piastri. And when you add that to Piastri's sort of, I think it's fair to say, better, more incisive racecraft, he's become a really, really formidable package. And at the moment, Lando Norris has no answer for him. The margins on ultimate pace are really small, hundredths of a second here or there. But whereas last year it was Norris with the advantage, this year it's Piastri. And I think I'm actually doing an interview with Piastri in Monaco next weekend, and one of the things I want to ask him is just exactly how has he managed to do that. We have to remember, this is only his 3rd season in Formula 1, and there was a stat came up on the screen a few minutes ago which I was already aware of, but he's been at McLaren only for 3 years. Norris has been there since 2019. Now, of course, McLaren weren't a winning team for much of that period, but already Piastri has won more races in Formula 1 than Norris has, and that's all through, effectively, this season. So, a really, really interesting storyline, which I think we're only beginning to see the start of.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Piastri is still fastest at this point, and it looks like most of them now have done their run on the soft tyre. It is Piastri fastest from his teammate Lando Norris. Pierre Gasly in that surprising 3rd place for Alpine. Every now and then they have a rapid car, Alpine. It is quite intriguing because Pierre Gasly qualified 4th in Bahrain earlier on this year. That was impressive. He finished 7th in the race itself, and yet other times he's qualified well down the grid. Miami wasn't great, they had problems, and he ended up finishing in 13th there. But yeah, today it's definitely got good pace. Russell is 4th, Verstappen is currently 5th, so the top Ferrari now is 6th place. Charles Leclerc is in 6th place, Hadjar 7th, Tsunoda is in 8th place in the Racing Bull, Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz are now 9th and 10th in the 2 Williams. Listen to Leclerc.
Guys, we need to work on 10, 3 or 5, 9, 11. It's critical, I would say.
That's interesting that he's saying that 5, 9, 11, so that's the Villeneuve chicane, then into Piratella to a 9 at the top of the hill, and then 11 is that drop down the hill into the double right-hander. But they're all actually slightly different corners. I thought he was going to say corners that were all quite the same, but they're all a bit different.
Yeah, I thought as soon as he, particularly when he mentioned the chicane, I thought it was going to be about braking, because that's what we've heard them complain about so far. But I think what's quite telling when you look at the timesheets is not just that Leclerc is down in 6th or 7th place right now, 6th place, but he's about half a second off the pace on the same tyre at the same time in the session. It's a fairly genuine comparison, about half a second off, and that's a huge chunk. Hamilton another couple of tenths back from that, so they've got work to do in front of their home crowd here.
Does sound like it. Both Lewis and Charles are coming back with a lot of comments to the team. It sounds like they're going to have a busy night, unlike the years you used to mechanic for McLaren, Mark, where you used to end up sometimes working all night. They're not allowed to do that anymore, are they?
Well, they're not, but what you can do now, and what they use to great effect, is a lot of the sort of advanced simulation tools they have to try and figure out the best solutions. So even though there's a curfew at the racetrack, there's no curfew back at the factories. There'll be a whole team of people working much later into the night, not mechanically on the car itself, of course, but simulating new ideas, trying different setups in the virtual world. They'll be trying to understand what changes they can put on the car on Saturday morning that will then make the most effective change and find a solution to the problems they've got. So we're no longer restricted. I mean, we used to do this back in my day, but nowhere near to the same extent. It's now much more virtual and digital, and the tools at their team's disposals now are really quite advanced.
Absolutely. So we have, I think, seen everybody on the soft tyres now. Fernando Alonso, interestingly, right down at the bottom of the table, down in 20th place.
So Alonso's just done a flying lap because he didn't get one in on his first run. And interestingly, he's popped up to 14th, Ben, but he's 3 places ahead of his teammate Lance Stroll. Now, it's not a surprise to see Fernando Alonso ahead of Lance Stroll, obviously, but the difference today is that Lance Stroll has the upgrade package on that Aston Martin, and Alonso is still running the old spec all day, and they're going to compare the data from the two of them.
Is Alonso on a medium tyre as well?
No, he's on. Who is he?
It does say he's on a medium.
He is, yeah.
And he's done a reasonable lap on a medium tyre, so that's slightly odd, isn't it?
Well, he didn't do his run on the. He did his run on the soft tyre, but aborted it. I don't know whether that was an error or traffic. We saw him have some traffic earlier, but that was not his fastest lap on the soft. It is interesting that he's gone out again on the medium to set that time, so it's not comparable with Stroll's lap, which was on the soft tyre. Whatever, big number crunching to come tonight on the Aston Martin. They'll be hoping that the data suggests that upgrade package is a step forward, because basically in Miami they were the slowest car, and they're really having a dire start to this season, and that might not seem that important with Adrian Newey on board now, and most of their effort going into 2026. But if they can't trust their tools, the wind tunnel and the simulation, and that's been their big problem over the last 2 years, putting upgrades on the car and not behaving in the way they expect them to from the simulations, if they can't trust that, how can they have any confidence going into next year, even with Adrian Newey in charge of the technical office?
Absolutely. No, it's very interesting. And just looking down that list, actually, funnily enough, with Alonso coming in with that time that was 0.9 of a second off what Piastri has done, it means we've now got 15 cars within a second of the fastest. Piastri's 1:15.293. You go down to Liam Lawson, who was 0.962 of a second off, and that is the most this year. I was looking back, Australia 14 in FP2 were within a second. No, we've gone to 15 now here at Imola, on a dry surface, no doubt about it. As I mentioned earlier, possibility of some rain on Sunday, but we've got a good dry surface today. Reasonable temperatures, around 20 degrees, not super hot, but it's working well. They're now very much more into race practice now, because many of them are going on to the medium tyres, definitely got more fuel in the cars. We're watching Max Verstappen, for example. They won't be doing quicker laps now, but they will be doing very, very important assessments.
Yeah, and it's really important because the tyre they're on now, which is the medium tyre for this weekend, was effectively the soft tyre at this race last year. Now, in the race last year, when what is the C5, that used to be the soft tyre, or the softest that was available, that was the least preferred tyre, and it was hardly used at all in the Grand Prix. This year they will have to do that, because the softest tyre is another step softer now, the C6, which means that the yellow banded medium tyre, which was the softest red wall tyre last year, is going to be a race tyre. So these laps now are super critical, because they need to know what the degradation is going to be like when the car's full of fuel. They're highly likely to start the race on this tyre, so they need to know how quickly the pace is going to drop off, how long the tyre is going to last before the performance begins to disappear, how hard they can push before that happens. Do they need to look after it? There's so many questions that need answering, because this is a slightly new territory for them around here.
Absolutely, I totally agree. Interesting, we're just watching Kimi Antonelli. He's on to his medium compound tyres now. He's not set any particularly quick laps. He's actually quite a long way down the list. He's down in 18th place. The 18-year-old Italian who has been improving and showing some tremendous performances recently, particularly that taking that sprint pole in Miami, ended up finishing in 7th, and then qualified 3rd in the Grand Prix there, did end up finishing in 6th place. He's had a couple of several 6th place finishes, but a best finish of 4th. That was in the opening round in Australia. This is his home event. He was born and brought up just about 30 minutes away, I think, from where we are here at Imola. So for Antonelli, with all his family and friends coming along, it puts the pressure on a little bit, in a little bit of a way. And yet I do feel, although he's not delivered a particularly quick time today, I think he is still going to be someone to keep an eye on, because Russell's shown good pace. He's been 4th fastest.
Yeah, absolutely. There's pace in that Mercedes car. It's just about unlocking it. It will be interesting to see if the pressure gets to him. I saw a lovely little video that Mercedes released earlier on, because Toto Wolff's not here this weekend. He's actually out in the US. But he sent a little message back to the two drivers, and part of that message was just saying, look, you are going to have a sort of almost unimaginable pressure on you with the sort of home support, and you're going to become a national hero at 18 years old. And they were looking to George Russell, who's not a particularly old driver, but certainly the senior driver of the team, for the guidance and the support that Kimi's clearly going to need to protect him from all of that.
What's he doing in the US, Mark?
I don't know.
How do you know he's in the US?
Because it was what he said in the video.
Okay.
Why? What is he doing in the
I don't
US?
know. I'm interested now.
No, he was flying off to LA. I did know the answer to this, but I can't remember. I don't think it's anything. I know you're always searching for a story, Andrew, but I don't think there's one here.
There are always more questions. You can send us questions if you want as well on X on the hashtag BBC F1. And thank you to Chris, who's put up a nice comment saying nice to hear my voice. Well, it's nice to be with Radio 5 Live this weekend, standing in when I get that little opportunity just to do the odd Formula 1s again. It's always fun for me too, and I'm enjoying seeing what's going on now. We're watching Gabriele Bortoleto, who is on track, and we're very much more looking at race pace, and Andrew will give us a bit more analysis on that later on, I'm sure, in this practice session. We shall look forward to that. But of course, the fastest times they have set already on those soft tyres. This is going to be the 600th Grand Prix for Sauber this weekend. They were rapid earlier on, not so rapid in FP2 because Bortoletto's 16th, Hulkenberg 19th, still just within a second or so of the fastest times. But this is more like what we've seen from Sauber this year. They're usually down at that lower end of the order.
Yeah, I mean, the times that we see in FP2 are always a little bit more representative of what we're likely to see over the rest of the weekend, just because we kind of know the programme for FP2. They're going to do the qualifying runs that we've seen on the soft tyre, then they're going to move into these sort of heavier fuel race runs. It's a fairly set and standard programme, so there is at least a decent comparison we can make, because we know most people are on a similar programme right now. In FP1, everyone's trying different things, got new parts in the car, so the times that come out of that session are a little bit, you have to be taken with a little pinch of salt. But normal service more or less resuming right now. We've got two McLarens at the top, not a lot between them, just sort of a couple of hundredths of a second, but importantly for Piastri, and it's not a worry for Norris, but as I said earlier on, just that little thing that just gets in his head, the fact that he's not the quickest, not going to emerge from this session as the quickest McLaren driver. There is nothing between them really in times, but the timesheets will say once again that Oscar Piastri was quicker than Lando Norris, and I just, as I said, I wonder how long it will take before that really starts to get to him.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing, but he's had good results here, Lando. Although he's not actually won this race, he's had 3 podiums in the last 3 events. He was third in 2021, he was third in 2022, and then second last year, and so close to Max Verstappen on the final lap. We were really all very excited watching it, because it looked like he might get Max, but actually Max played it very carefully, played it well, and took the victory. Can Lando take his first win here this weekend? Well, as you say, his big rival in a way at the moment looks like it may well be his teammate Oscar Piastri, who perhaps he has a bit less experience around Imola, but he does have some Italian background himself in family, so he's pretty happy to be here as well.
Yeah, I believe he went to see the sort of either the birthplace or the hometown of his great-great-grandfather.
That was super dangerous from the Red Bull. Copy.
We just saw a moment there that Kimi Antonelli, my goodness, that was a bit scary, because he was coming down to a section where he was going flat out ready to brake, and there was the Red Bull, I think it was Tsunoda rather than Verstappen, and thankfully Tsunoda just moved out of the way in time, but that was a bit, it does make you worry sometimes, the way they keep complaining about each other, but they are nearly hitting each other several times.
It's a super fast circuit, super narrow, unsighted at times as you come over the crest of hills. There's a lot of, I said it earlier on, but there's a lot of reliance on the team here to work with the driver to keep them really informed over the radio around the lap. It's really critical. Just looking at that Gasly in the Alpine, he's still currently in third place, only around a quarter of a second back from Piastri, and ahead of the likes of Russell, Verstappen, Leclerc on those soft tyre runs. So a really good run from Gasly. We also saw them being very, very fast in the speed traps, and I wonder if they have gone quite low downforce, which of course also equals low drag. It tends to, in normal conditions, not help you in a race situation, because you can't look after the tyres without the downforce to protect them, and you start to slide around and wear them. But it does, of course, help you over a qualifying lap where it's all about the outright speed. But here at Imola, where overtaking so difficult and qualifying so important, if they can make that low drag and low downforce setup work for them on Saturday and get to a position where they're quite far up the grid, there is a very high chance, a very good chance, that they still might be able to keep cars behind them, even though they might struggle to look after tyres.
It's quite interesting that they're doing these race paces now, and actually the Kimi Antonelli, who didn't set a particularly quick time on the soft tyre. He's just done some good lap time. 120.0 he did just now, Kimi Antonelli, and that is around some of the quickest times we're seeing at this time. Hamilton's done a pretty rapid one, although his next lap not quite so quick. The low 1 minute 20 seems to be the sort of zone they're in, and as I say, Antonelli's just done a very good lap, so that will give us a slightly different indication perhaps of which cars are going to work well. I see Leclerc's just done a 119, so yeah, the Ferrari's looking reasonably good on this tyre right now.
Yeah, on this tyre, with the caveat that because the cars are now loaded up with fuel, there's no rule about how much fuel you put in, so there will be varying amounts. For the teams, this is much more about, of course, they know their own fuel loads. This is about knowing what their car's going to do on a known fuel quantity on this particular tyre. For us sitting here on the outside, it's actually in the race run simulations like this, it's a little bit more difficult to compare them because we don't know.
Something gets scratching my foot on the braking into turn 2, and then I'll continue driving, but we need to check out my clipper foot.
It's do you know what, it could well be, because I've had this before and I don't know the configuration of that Red Bull, but he said it's going into turn 2, as you turn the steering column, quite often there's a sort of knuckle joint or a joint halfway down that allows the change in angle of the steering column at that point, and it runs right between the two pedals. It could just be that as he's turning into that with his foot on the brake as well, that little knuckle joint that rotates with the column is just touching his foot, so that would be my best guess.
It's a good guess from you, Mark, when you've worked on Formula 1 cars so much over the years, and you've had comments from drivers when you've been working on the cars about something odd going on, and you've had to solve it, and I can quite imagine that. That's really good to hear. So it's quite a busy time out on track at the moment, actually. We've got a lot of cars on the medium compound tyre putting together the sort of race paces that will give us an idea, and yeah, they've got to try and keep out of each other's way, there's no doubt about it. Lando's done a 119 a lap or so just a moment ago. Quite a few of the quick ones are in the low 1 minute 20s, and even some of those who haven't done a particularly quick lap, like Ollie Behrman, for example, who is currently 12th fastest on the overall list. He's just done a low 1 minute 20. So, as you said, it's very difficult for us to judge at this point because the fuel levels that they will have will all be very different. They are on race pace. The teams know exactly where they are, but for everyone, all of us trying to keep an eye on it, it's hard to compare until we actually get into the race itself.
Yeah, it's also really important for the drivers, of course, because they are the ones that are going to start to really understand how the feeling of the car changes as the fuel comes off, as the tyres start to increase the number of laps they've had. They need to know that the level of push that they go through on lap 1 on the tyre stint, how that's going to compare to the level of push they can afford to go through on lap 6 or 7 of a tyre stint. So just the feeling and the feedback that the driver gets through their own sort of experience in the car is also really valuable and important in this session.
Yeah, it is, and it's a critical time, there's no doubt about it. Frank Colapinto just keeping an eye on his mirrors. He's got George Russell behind him, and George Russell just going over the line, getting a little bit held up there, if anything. He needs to find a way past. Got to show that it is not that easy, because of course it's almost like a race pace now that they're doing, and you don't want to have to back off and slow down. We're seeing Flavio Briatore in the Alpine garage at the moment, keeping an eye on everything that's going on, of course. And actually George Russell's backed off now, hasn't he? Understandably, because he was just being held up a little bit.
It's almost like a little mini race in itself on a Friday afternoon, which we're all here for. But anyway, Andrew, whilst this is all going on and everyone's learning so much, it is now time for everyone's favourite bit of radio. I have no doubt it will be award-winning as ever. It's time for this.
Long Run Corner with Andrew Benson.
You can go the distance, we'll find out in the long run.
Well, Mark, I might even get to do 2 long run corners. We're doing a kind of halfway house one here, just because I think there's some quite interesting data. Oh, we've got a car in the wall. It's a racing bull.
Oh, Andrew, your big moment.
It's all right. It's Isaiah Hadjar. No one cares.
I don't think he's actually... Has he damaged it?
No, he's still moving, isn't he, Ben? I think he's going under his own steam. Let me just get the numbers out. Oh, he's getting going again through the gravel trap, so he's all right. So look, it's been quite interesting. Unsurprisingly, the McLarens are the quickest. But he's still taking a bit of time getting back on the track, Isaac Hadjar, isn't he? But Oscar Piastri went off with like a scolded cat with 2 really quick laps to start his run. He was a lot quicker than anybody else. But then he's lost a bit of time, and maybe he's overcooked his tyres a bit, because at the moment Piastri and Norris are pretty much neck and neck. Norris actually slightly quicker on average at 1 minute 20.003, and Piastri at 1 minute 20.116. But between them is Charles Leclerc's Ferrari, 1 minute 20.067. So they may be struggling on one lap, but on the race run, the Ferrari looks really quick. Although I just noticed, looking at the times as they click through now, that his next run, of course, it may have been traffic influenced. His next lap was about 7/10 off that. We've got a red flag now, actually, while Hadjar negotiates the grass and the gravel. Max Verstappen, though, is nowhere near. Here's some radio.
Yeah, I'm stuck.
Yes, Isaac, you are. Max Verstappen nowhere near the McLarens. He's about 5/10 off on average. And Kimi Antonelli actually is quite a lot quicker than Verstappen, a couple of tenths behind the Norris, Piastri, Leclerc pace setting. So the 2 McLarens and Leclerc the quickest, followed by Kimi Antonelli, followed by Max Verstappen.
That's interesting, because one of the questions we had, Kieran Stanfield using the hashtag BBCF1, he says, which is the second fastest car? You see, you've been giving us a little bit of an idea. Is it the Ferrari at the moment?
Here, today, right now, on race pace, yes, the Ferrari is the second fastest car, or it looks like it's as quick as the McLaren. On average over the season, in terms of qualifying pace, we're just getting a replay of Hadjar.
Yeah.
Oh, he gets on the curb on the exit of the Tamburello chicane, doesn't he? And
then through the gravel. You hear that gravel being chucked up and then bashed into the barrier. But actually the contact, just quickly, Mark, the contact with the barrier, that barrier is quite a protective barrier. Hopefully that won't have done too much damage, and it didn't look as though the car was too badly damaged.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see it. We're getting good slow-mo now, but it goes inside on, which is always a worry from a sort of technical point of view, particularly around the rear end. So front end goes in first, back end, they're very energy-absorbing sort of tyre barriers, these, with an advertising hoarding on the front. So he might get away with it, but I think they'll definitely want to strip it apart and have a full check, because the drive shaft and rear suspension is definitely a key element which can be damaged. So
the front tracking may well have been knocked out too.
Yeah, it'll need a full strip down and check, but they're well used to doing that thing. It's still in one piece and in looks in the right sort of configuration, but they'll measure it down to the nth degree as always and make any changes if necessary.
It was frustrating for Isaac though, because he got it out of the barrier, was beginning to drive it, but then he got stuck, and now they've had to pick the car up. He's out of the car, they've had to pick it up and move it away, so there's absolutely no chance. Okay, we've only got 4 minutes of this second practice session still to go, but disappointing for Hadjar that he wasn't able to get the car back onto the track and just continue round. But the marshals doing a great job of getting it out of the way, and the others will still get a brief chance to do a few more laps around this circuit and get a bit more feel. For those who have made it back, and Isaac's being asked to get out of the way, come on, let's go and get somewhere safe, which he is doing now. Of course, it does give the drivers who've come back into the pits, the other drivers with their cars, a chance to have a quick chat with the teams, maybe make some tiny little modifications before going out for another lap or so at the end.
It's going to be a very brief run to the flag, isn't it? So we've still got red flag conditions with 3.5 minutes to go. If they do get out, it'll be an out lap, one flyer probably, and then find their way back round to do practice start. So it actually really, unfortunately, disrupts those race runs. You don't really want to break in the middle of a long run where you're analysing the sort of tyre deg and fuel burn, all those kind of things. So disrupting for everybody. Just going back to what Andrew said about the Ferrari being in the middle of the 2 McLarens at this point in terms of the longer runs, it's all very well and that's quite impressive, but if you can't deliver the qualifying pace on Saturday, as we keep saying, around this particular racetrack, it's not really going to matter. And equally, conversely, looking at Max Verstappen, who it looks like he's struggling in the longer runs at this point, certainly from the times that Andrew's got noted down. If he can deliver the 1 lap pace, maybe that longer run pace isn't so critical.
Okay, you have a look. Almost at the second lap. So I had it not in my hand, but falling in my seat.
There's a slightly strange discussion going on there that he's had various things, a feel on his foot, now a nut in his hand that he's dropped.
You know, I once, one of my first ever races was with David Coulthard in Brazil, and he rolled up to the start line having done the green flag lap, and he said there's a great big gold nut on the floor of the cockpit, and someone said, well, can you reach it? This is on the way round to the grid. He's flailing around trying to find it. He finds this thing, he says it's huge, and someone said, well, I don't know what to do. He's rolling up to the start and he's pulled up near the pit wall. He said, chuck it over the pit wall. So he's literally in the car on the grid, launched this great big gold aluminium nut over the pit wall. Someone caught it, went away and found out what it was, and we were able to sort of analyse and find out what the consequence was going to be. And in the end, he carried on. The engine blew up. So it was nothing to do with the engine. It was the suspension component, but it was the engine that stopped him in the end.
Amazing. That's a great story. Well, there we go. We mentioned David Coulthard earlier being the last McLaren winner around here at Imola, and of course you worked with him plenty of times at McLaren. Well, let's see whether McLaren are going to be able to take a victory here after quite a long gap at Imola. They are the fastest. We have just got a minute and a half to go in second practice right now. Piastri fastest from Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly third fastest. We've been looking, as you heard, at some of the race pace that they've been doing, and it does look as though McLaren are in good form. So if they can qualify well, they can race very well, and it could be, of course, a battle between Norris and Piastri that becomes the big thing. And actually there have been incidents here between great teammates at this track in the past. Senna and Prost, they had a big argument developed because of going into what is called turn 7. There was a restart and they had agreed not to overtake each other at the start of the race, and then the race was restarted and Senna did pass Prost. It caused a big argument, didn't it?
In fact, that was the actual fracture point between their relationship. They'd had quite a tense fight for the championship in 1988, Senna and Prost, and there was one particular flashpoint at Estoril when Prost passed Senna for the lead, and Senna ran him right up against the pit walls to the extent that the teams had to lift their pit boards out of the way to stop Prost hitting them. Prost was obviously not very happy about that. Senna won the championship in Suzuka with a brilliant drive in the rain, but the relationship, although tense, it pretty much survived 1988. But that point at Imola that you just described exactly right, Ben, was the point where from that moment on they stopped talking to each other, and it all got very unpleasant at McLaren, and it ended, of course, Prost signed for Ferrari midway through that year to join in 1990, and then it ended with that collision at the chicane in 1989 at Suzuka where Prost turned in on Senna, and Senna continued, Prost didn't. Senna got disqualified in controversial fashion, and they didn't really their relationship was never the same again after that moment in Imola, and they didn't really come back together in a kind of harmonious way until Prost left Formula One at the end of 1993. And I think Senna kind of missed him at the start of 1994 and sort of started talking to him again.
Yeah, I remember that.
It emerged later after Senna's death, trying to persuade Prost to come back to Formula One, actually. I think he missed almost the camaraderie, the target that Prost had created for him. He had a different target in 1994, of course, with Michael Schumacher. But it was all very sad that he died before their relationship was able to remold itself. I think they probably would have ended up great friends as they grew older, Senna and Prost, but they never got the chance.
So that's one of the stories. Let's hope that it doesn't happen this weekend between the two McLaren teammates, but let's just tell you, they are the two fastest in FP2. Oscar Piastri has topped the times again as he did in FP1. Lando Norris second fastest in the other McLaren with a tiny difference. Pierre Gasly surprisingly third fastest with Alpine, and George Russell fourth fastest for Mercedes. Max Verstappen, the big rival to the McLarens, fifth fastest for Red Bull. Charles Leclerc with that good race pace, but only sixth fastest on the single flying lap earlier on. Isaac Hadjar did a good job, seventh fastest for Racing Bulls. Yuki Tsunoda was eighth. Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz for Williams, ninth and 10th, showing that the Williams car is working well here. 11th fastest Lewis Hamilton ahead of Ollie Behrman. Franco Colapinto with Alpine this weekend, back in Formula One, having taken Jack Doohan's place. 13th fastest. Fernando Alonso 14th. Liam Lawson 15th. Gabriel Bortoletto in the Sauber 16th fastest. Lance Stroll 17th. Kimi Antonelli all the way down in 18th, but actually showing some pretty good race pace. Nico Hülkenberg was 19th in the Sauber, and slowest again in FP2 as he was in FP1, but only by a tiny margin, Esteban Ocon. in the Haas. So that's how the 20 cars are looking. Quick thought, Mark, from you before we move on.
I think a few people might start looking a little bit more closely at Pierre Gasly. I think he's finished in third position there. A very decent, genuine amount of pace in that Alpine. Low drag, low downforce setup. And there is a good scenario here where you can get yourself into a great position on the grid and sacrifice a huge amount of race pace and the normal sort of tendency to try and look after tyres just to be able to get your position right on a Saturday and then just defend like crazy on a Sunday. This is one of those racetracks where you can do that. It doesn't always make for great racing, but the teams don't care about that. They care about the finishing position at the end of the checkered flag at the end of the race. So there's a good chance here that someone like Pierre Gasly and others who may just start to look at that version of a setup, moving slightly more towards favouring qualifying over the race pace, could be a scenario that might affect things overnight. We might see some changes tomorrow. You never know.
It's a very good point. And actually also one other thing I was thinking about, last year Oscar Piastri did a good job in qualifying in terms of pace, but he actually held up Kevin Magnussen in Q1. It gave him a penalty, so he lost several places on the grid. And today we've seen just how easy it is to get in the way of people, so that could be something in qualifying they need to be careful of, not to hold up others and then get a penalty.
Yeah, especially in Q1 when everyone's out on the circuit. As I said earlier on, it's going to take a lot of sort of teamwork from the team and engineers working very closely. It's always quite stressful in racetracks like this when you're on the pit wall and you're in a team trying to manage the positions around the track with all 20 cars out there at the same time, many of them on a flying lap, some of them just trying to warm tyres up. It's difficult, but it's a job that has to be done very, very well.
No, well, we'll see. And as I say, it happened to Oscar Piastri last year. This year he has currently set the pace yet again. Very, very impressive. The man who is leading the championship right now and has had a remarkable run of success in recent races. Can Piastri add another victory? Is it going to be a big rivalry between the two McLaren teammates, with Lando Norris being so close? Are we going to see others in there in the battle? And will Ferrari, having shown that good race pace that Andrew was telling us about at a home circuit with so much support from the Italian fans, will Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc be able to do something just a little bit more to deliver a good result here at Imola? And don't forget, there is a slight chance of some rain on Sunday. We'll have free practice 3 and the qualifying tomorrow, so there'll be plenty to look forward to. Thanks for joining us for our coverage of FP1 and FP2. From me, Ben Edwards, from Mark Priestley and Andrew Benson, let's hand back over now to Kevin Howells.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks everyone there. Of course, the Grand Prix to look forward to as well, not long after lunch on Sunday here on Extra. Tonight at 6:30 we've got golf, PGA Championship.